Russia has reason to fear NATO expansion besides sovereignty, right? I mean,
why? Where?
Well, because Lindsey Graham, even when he was online, literally calling for the assassination of Putin, saying, "I hope somebody goes and takes him out."
That's not. What is the threat? What is the threat of NATO to Russia?
Let me have a point. I'm saying genuinely, there is a general understanding. The United States does see Russia as a threat. They are a threat in general. I don't think they're our greatest threat. I believe that the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, is a much greater existential threat in all cases. But Russia does pose a threat. In fact, we've talked nothing about Russia being the greatest threat, and there's even a disagreement in our own government on who is a greater threat, China or Russia. If you have a sitting member of Congress literally writing online about the U.S. interest, even if you say he acted rogue or alone, feeling emboldened to say about assassinating and taking out a world leader, yes, they have reason to believe that there is actually a threat of NATO moving and toppling the regime. I don't think we could sit here for one moment and think that we wouldn't want to see in the West Russia somehow being or Putin's regime being toppled, and somehow Russia ends up adopting some sort of a Western alliance or a Western military and trade alliance, becoming one less piece or one less threat.
Regardless of what we want, though, we respect that country as its thing. We are not actively trying to topple it. And even when they're involved in foreign affairs in other countries, we don't get directly involved. That's why Assad was able to hold on to Syria, because Putin decided to go down and help him out there. We didn't send troops in because we didn't want NATO troops firing on Russian troops. This idea that NATO represents a threat to Russia is just not true. It's fantastic. We can talk about Facebook posts or what people are tweeting, but NATO is not going to be invading Russia. NATO does not attack Russia, and NATO countries know that Russia doesn't attack NATO. This idea that there's like some threat to NATO, what is the threat? The threat that Russia can't just move in and start bullying countries around it? What is the threat?
So the threat is two things. So number one, when you look at Ukraine, like I mentioned earlier, they don't want this flat land, the actual land where you can move troops, the opportunity, the strategic point to actually move and have the ability to transfer large amounts of troops into Russia, or at least that's what they claim, and I'm taking them at face value.
Do we think that a war between the U.S. and Russia is going to be a ground invasion? Is that what do we really think
I didn't claim it's going to be.
But I'm asking what the threats are.
Well, this is what I'm saying.
You're telling me what Putin is saying. I'm asking what you think. Obviously, Putin is going to say there are Nazis in there. Well, I just want a real answer for once, for one of these questions.
I want to finish because this is what you do.
Okay.
You interrupt people.
Because you're not saying anything.
Yes. So I'm saying, legitimately speaking. So they have the flat land that you move in. Number two, yes, we do not know, or they do not have understanding of what would happen if the West and if these Western alliances does create total and totality control along their border. They
already have in the Baltics.
Listen, they have conceded. This is still conceding power. It is not. Maybe it's
not their power to concede. It's not their country. Nothing you're saying makes sense. Ukraine is not the country of Russia. They're not conceding.
So whose country is it? Is it the Eastern individuals or is it the Western? How do we solve the conflict? That's the important
I have an idea
factor.
how to solve the conflict. You let Ukraine choose. If they want to join NATO, they can join NATO. If they want to join the nation state that Putin is trying to build between Belarus, Russia, and Ukraine, then they can join
And they can't decide themselves.
They absolutely can decide.
No, they are split.
They absolutely
right now
have been. That's why Zelensky has so much popularity. It's why they're fighting a war right now.
Yes.
And they're beating a country with 5 times active military members. It's because they're choosing to have their own country and to make their decisions.
One section of the land. There's a reason why they literally, if you look at the UN, you can see the line, the militarized line that is actually in their own country. How can a country that has its own militarized line between two regions who don't even see the election as being the same way? Yes, does the Western part have more power? Does it have more international respect? Yes. That is, of course, to be understood, as we've already seen in the revolution and what the interests of the West would be. But that does not mean that the country has solved its own issue. And so what we are doing is we are coming in with Russia, saying Russia's bad for trying to back the right's claim that they're the true and right leaders of Ukraine, and that's what Ukraine was. And we're saying, okay, Russia's bad, for that, and Russia's saying we're bad for backing the West.
It's equivocation again. Our backing is sending military aid or... Hello? It's sending aid or military aid or money. Their backing is troops on the ground or troops on the borders, shelling or invading the country. This is a huge equivocation between the type of support. If they were just sending in arms or whatever, it would be a different question. But Russia has active military operations going on in the Donbass. You cannot compare these two. And they've already invaded and annexed and stolen property, the whole Crimean Peninsula, not even just Sevastopol, but the entire peninsula from Ukraine. You can't equivocate between the actions of these two sides. And they did it because Ukraine turned their back on a exclusive Russian trade union. That's why they did it. To say that NATO's doing the same by using propaganda and trying to convince them to join European Union free trade agreements, that's the same thing as Russia literally going in and stealing your shit. I don't know how you can possibly equivocate between these two things.
So if the people in the eastern part don't feel like Russia's coming in and stealing their shit, but they're trying to end a war that he says he would end, and I don't know, he might be lying, but says, here's what we want, neutrality. I do not want another militarized country on our border of the West and what's going on. Even just today, I believe he was on report. I don't know, I got the kind of translation was pretty sketchy, but he actually said, hey, I don't want any other country intervening in this. We really just want the East, and we want it to be at peace, and we want the shelling to stop, and we want the military interactions and the engagement to cease.
Of course they want it at peace because they're trying to steal it from Ukraine. That would be like me going into your house.
Who decides that it's stolen?
That would be like me. We've decided in 1991 when Ukraine declared independence and they have internationally recognized borders. If I take a bunch of friends and I go into your garage and we start fighting for weeks about who owns your garage, and then somebody else comes in and says, "Can't you guys just be peaceful and I get to own your shit now?" No, you wouldn't accept that.
That's not what happened. You're mischaracterizing it completely.
Okay, in 2014, did Russia send troops into the Donbass to assist with that separatist movement?
Yes.
Okay, was that part of the country part of Ukraine with internationally recognized borders since 1991?
So there's a country. Let me ask you this.
Come on, answer that.
Yes, but I'm asking you. So a country on your border, on your border is going through a revolution, which they can't agree on their own. No, they cannot agree.
They having internal strife or revolution does not give another country the right. We're looping. Does not give another country the right to come in and steal your shit.
Yes, we're almost arguing semantics. I'm saying
it's not semantics. It's paramount.
When the eastern part feels like they have been cooed by the West, they do not believe the election is fair, there is a country that acknowledges that we believe that the government that you believe is elected is the true and right government. Therefore, you're not going to follow what you believe is a fake and a puppet regime. So you are there, and so you have this line set across. You have lots of shelling, lots of things going on. They're saying, hey, we want to stabilize our border. Does a nation at a neighboring country that is having a revolution, that is having a military strategy where it could potentially bring conflict, that you already see there's actual conflict going on at your border, have international sovereignty and right to try to come in and stabilize to prevent conflict from coming further and reaching further into their land. Russia, in and of itself, didn't move too far west, and there still is a problem, and they did at some point, and we could argue the semantics if they really did pull out their military strategy. This is an issue that is so great, that is so mighty, that was going on there, that we never resolved it for the 8 years. So yes, am I, like I said, going to defend everything Putin did? No, with an understanding, though, that Western Ukraine and the way it's presented to the world is as if Ukraine is this unified country, and most people I've spoken to, at least, don't even know that there's been an ongoing civil war for 8 years, and they haven't even been able to solve internal conflict.
An ongoing civil war that's been backed by Russia. Of course it's been ongoing. Russia has 5 times the active military. No, where are the United States with troops on the ground in Ukraine?
We don't. I'm not saying the troops.
Okay, then don't say that it's backed by both. It's not. There's
money is important. It doesn't matter.
Money is not everything, though.
Yes, but money is important in war. Money is important in war. Right now, we're backing the Western Ukraine ideals, and we're giving them plenty of money. I think we just give another $800 million package. That is important. Yes, we aren't putting troops. That would be a huge escalation. We know it's wrong. But I am saying,
why would that be wrong?
Because it's not on our.
Why would that be wrong? If the U.S. sent troops there, why would that be wrong?
Why would it be wrong if we sent troops there? I don't believe there's any interest in our national interest to actually fight for Ukraine's sovereignty. I think this is an internal struggle that they have, a civil war that they need to solve.
Then why couldn't you just apply what you just said to Russia? This is an internal struggle that they have to solve. There's no business for Russia.
I didn't justify. Listen to me. I did not say. I said Ukraine is evil. The argument is not that Russia is good. The argument is that the entire conflict is misrepresented to the world as if there is a unified country. I'm repeating that.
Nobody is saying that. Obviously, there's.
I'm genuinely saying this. That has this desire. When they have an internal conflict, they have not solved. Russia is not a good country in general. I said that at the beginning. He's actually an authoritarian. Were his actions and what he's done in his life, even with annexation, was it illegal? Absolutely, international law. However, the problem is Russia does not play by Western rules, and the problem is we do have a conflict that Russia sees Eastern Ukraine as being the real Ukraine. They see themselves, at least internationally through propaganda, we're told, as Ukrainians. They were not given that acknowledgement, that understanding. That is a civil war. We are backing one side of the civil war. They are backing the other side. Are they backing it in ways that I think would be foolish? Absolutely. Do I think Russia should be there? That doesn't, my opinion as a 29-year-old guy in America doesn't matter.
If any European country had an issue where there was a civil war inside the country, in Italy and Greece and France and Germany, any of these countries, and some other country decided to step in to guarantee peace, they said they were going to start breaking off regions of another country. Nobody would accept that. Everybody would look at them like they're insane. Nobody would say that you're allowed to step in. Again, like this whole conversation has been you accurately stating things that are going on, but are total non sequiturs for the justification of Russia invading Ukraine. There's a civil war. Yeah, of course, I acknowledge that. Like, there's conflict in Ukraine. Yeah, of course, I acknowledge that. There's a division between East Ukraine and West Ukraine. It's exaggerated heavily by the Kremlin, but I still acknowledge that exists, right? There are issues in
Crimea. I said in the beginning that I wasn't going to justify the actions of Putin.
I acknowledge every single thing you're saying. The descriptive facts are generally true, but none of that, not a single one of those facts, builds on Russia having provocation or justification for invading Ukraine.
So I don't think you understood my first statement, the fact that they have provocation.
Do you think
is it justified?
Does Russia have justification?
They do not have justification.
Oh, then what do we disagree on?
Because I'm saying that they have a reason that we did not respect, and that's why I said Ukraine is evil, the regime lying to its people, leading to a mass conflict, mass casualty, and of course refugees.
What is Ukraine lying to its people about?
Well, because it's this understanding that there could be an alliance. People called the bluff. Even I'll say, I don't know if anyone kind of got it wrong. When you heard that Russia was about to invade eastern Ukraine, it was like, really? Are you actually going to do a full military, even worse than 2014, full-scale invasion? I mean, from the left to the right, I think universally most people got it wrong. Even when put on defense, the Biden administration, I don't know if you saw that one interaction with the reporter, with the guy from, I think he was from the Department of Defense, when he kept saying, like, we have evidence, and they kept getting asked, what's the evidence? And he couldn't provide the evidence. We're like, no, they're not going to do this. So I think militarily, the government, the Biden administration was saying they were. I didn't think they were. I mean, saw like Hassan, even didn't know that he thought they were.
Okay, hold on. To be clear, the United States knew the invasion was going to happen.
That's what
we declassified and we leaked a ton of stuff.
I literally just said that the administration said this.
Okay.
I'm saying the commentators, people were like, I don't know, it seems pretty fucking crazy. And it was, and it is. That's why I'm not here to justify Putin. I'm saying there was an actual understanding. He did bring troops, that's why we knew, and he had these resolutions that he wanted to bring this neutrality. Ukraine disagreed. There was this understanding that we could do that without war. And I believe the people were lied to. They were not given proper understanding or proper information that you can, and they have the right to fight for what they want. If they want to conquer the eastern Ukraine, if they want to push...
not conquer, but bring it back under the control of the country that rightfully owns it, right?
Yes, but whatever the
When Elijah finishes his point, Destin, you can respond, and we'll do closing statements and go to Q&A.
Okay, so do they have the right? Yes. When I say Ukraine is evil, I mean this. All the past aside, I think universally that the people of Ukraine are victims of a regime that did not work in a way that was in the best interest of the people. I think even the EU disagreed with how fast the United States was trying to accelerate and push Western Ukraine, or as you would say, all of Ukraine, into being an ally, possibly a neighbor state or a NATO state, at the threat and ignoring the threat that we knew was real of Russia. And therefore, Ukrainians are victims of another United States pushed and backed move to get a country to be our ally. And this is a war that I believe could have been avoided through UN Security Council. We could have done this diplomatically. And that's why I believe the current regime is evil. They did something that was avoidable, and they have put and plunged their country into something that could take decades to recover from. The lives that were lost will never be returned. And so, yes, you can call Putin evil for invading. He was serious about it. We learned that. But Ukraine, by not acknowledging that and by lying to the world today and not being honest about the conflict through algorithm suppression, through our media, and not explaining the totality of what's going on, you're smart, so you know, but many people don't. I do believe Zelensky and that regime is evil, and they're painted as heroes when in reality, I believe they're enemies of their own people.
Ukraine would have been invaded no matter what. This idea that it was the West's fault, that it was NATO's fault, the reality is, and I believe if you ask most people today, honestly, even if you ask Putin, he would tell you, if you take NATO or the EU membership wasn't even on the table. This is many years in the future. NATO membership, probably not on the table, many years in the future. If you take both of these off the table, the situation is probably largely unchanged. The reality was that Russia was stacking a lot of troops on the borders. Russia still owns Sevastopol and the entire Crimean Peninsula, and Russia had a huge interest in seeing that southeast region conquered, which Ukraine was slowly winning back because of foreign assistance. The reality was that Russia was probably always going to be invading, whether or not NATO or EU membership or EU trade agreements or anything was on the table. The reality that we can sit here and continue to talk about Ukraine through the framing of Russian desires or Russian wants or Russian moving in and peacefully settling a war that involves stripping away territories from Ukraine, I just think is a totally unfair way to view the country of Ukraine and to view the Ukrainian people. Whether or not a conflict in a country exists, which it does not give reason for another country to come in and start stealing territory.